OpenAI being sued by Cameo over alleged trademark infringement. They are arguing that OpenAI's new Cameo feature in its Sora app unlawfully uses its trademark.
OpenAI has officially restructured itself into a public benefit corporation, with the original nonprofit entity now being called the OpenAI Foundation, retaining control over the commercial arm, legally requiring it to consider both financial results and its mission to ensure AGI benefits for all of humanity.
Agent mode is coming to the Cursor IDE, and they just released version 2 and focuses specifically on redesigned agent interface.
Elon has just launched his own AI-powered encyclopedia. It is named Grokopedia, and it's positioned as the truthful alternative to Wikipedia.
How young is too young for AI chatbots? The GUARD Act, introduced by Senators Josh Hawley and Richard Blumenthal, would require AI companies to verify users' ages and then block minors from using AI chatbots altogether. Annie, I've been thinking, and you know what I think we need more of here on our episodes of What the AI?
What?
We need more celebrity cameos and celebrity beefs. That's what we need. Celebrity cameos and celebrity beefs. I think that's what's going to drive viewers.
What the AI meets TMZ. That's what we need.
That's right. We need to make it onto TMZ. You know, that's how you drive the audience, is the TMZ hit. That's what I'm thinking.
All right. Well, what do you got on in that vein?
OpenAI just wanted to meet us halfway and try and help us at least get in this vein. So OpenAI this week being sued by Cameo over alleged trademark infringement. So Cameo, you may remember, launched in 2017, lets you hire celebrities to do kind of personalized video messages. It's kind of funky. You can see famous people reading your text to your friends or your company or whatever. And they are arguing that OpenAI's new Cameo feature in its Sora app unlawfully uses its trademark. So you can now put celebrities and characters into your Sora videos. And Cameo is beefing, saying you can't use the word cameo to describe such a feature. Of course, OpenAI is saying cameo is just a word that means somebody that you know popping up in a random way. You can't really trademark that in such a way that I can't use the word. So, we'll have to see how this one plays out in court.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it like a trademark of a person that they're actually just feel like they have ownership of the word cameo?
That's right. The word cameo that they are.
What's that game? Cranium. You know what? Cranium should go after Cameo for stealing their word, because Cameo is one of the themes in the board game. Isn't this just a word we all use?
I thought it was just a word, and that's what OpenAI's response was. And I'm going to quote from their response lawsuit: disagrees that anyone can claim exclusive ownership over the word cameo, which, to be honest, sounds pretty fair. Like, I feel like that's just a word. You can't claim ownership of the word when it's used as the word. Like, it just is what it is.
It's pretty crazy, but I mean, the actual problem is that they were able to put a trademark on a word. The problem is upstream from this particular lawsuit. What a wild story.
Yeah, it was kind of a fun starting story for us, the trademarking of a basic word and using, of course, Upstart also trademarked. So I don't we'll see if anybody tries to use that somewhere, and we have to sue them over the use of the word upstart, which is also a word, to be fair.
A word. I would argue a less commonly used word than the word cameo. Cameo is pretty common in the vernacular.
Particularly because it's used exactly as its meaning, like the showing up. But kudos to Cameo, I got to say, finding a way to reinsert it into the conversation where I feel like they have not really been in the conversation for a while. I hadn't thought about Cameo in a couple of years, and now I'm thinking about Cameo again. So if nothing else, good marketing plan.
That is an interesting business model. Like, just trademark a regular word, and then when anybody uses the regular word, use it as a PR stunt to make yourself relevant again. It's not a bad idea.
I'm not saying it wouldn't work. I'm not saying it wouldn't work.
Yeah, well, we'll see if this works out for them. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some maybe more serious OpenAI news. OpenAI has officially restructured itself into a public benefit corporation. You'll remember that there's a lot of discussion and debate about this. Earlier in the year, we covered multiple stories around Elon Musk's feelings about it, Microsoft's feelings, OpenAI feelings, etc. And now they have officially sort of announced the major restructuring of both its ownership and governance, with the original nonprofit entity now being called the OpenAI Foundation, retaining control over the commercial arm, which has been reorganized as a public benefit corporation, legally requiring it to consider both financial results and its mission to ensure AGI benefits for all of humanity. This is probably the most highly valued nonprofit corporation that you've ever heard of. So let's talk about that a little bit. The foundation holds a significant equity stake, reportedly worth around $130 billion, and will use future proceeds to fund mission aligned initiatives, starting with a $25 billion commitment to two of our most talked about areas. Number one, medical and scientific breakthroughs, super exciting. And number two, developing technologies that make societies more resilient to AI risks. I honestly can't think of a better sort of top two areas to start. And $25
25
billion.
billion. A lot of money.
Yeah, nothing to sneeze at. So a pretty good pledge there. Microsoft in this deal is going to remain a key investor and partner. So, under a reported agreement, Microsoft will hold about 27% stake in the newly structured public benefit corporation. They used to hold 32.5, so it's down a little bit. And OpenAI committed to a $250 billion in Azure purchases from Microsoft, but it's no longer required to only use Azure services.
Big. Yeah.
Yeah, purchase a lot of stuff, but also have a little bit more flexibility to use other stuff as well. And then similarly, Microsoft is allowed to pursue AGI initiatives with additional partners, so they are not completely dedicated to
Only
OpenAI
tied to
in this.
OpenAI. And yeah.
So, and then here's the sort of existential weird part. So all of that was like the big numbers and the provocative news. Here's the thing that's a little bit weird. There is an independent panel of experts that will now validate any claims of AGI, which is of course a totally ill-defined term that's made by OpenAI. And then Microsoft retains IP rights of models until 2032, even if it is determined that the models have achieved AGI.
Because previously they lost that when AGI was achieved. Microsoft lost their rights, and now they're saying, well, even if we get it before whatever it is, AGI, they still hold on to the rights to use those models until 2032.
That's right. This part I think is very curious of who are these independent experts? And since there's no definition that anybody agrees on, what are the puts and takes of how they're evaluating that? And is it going to be they know it when they see it type of standard when it just shows up and they're like, all right, this feels AGI-ish. So anyway, an interesting question.
Well, it's super interesting to see this finally done. I do think having OpenAI be a for-profit entity, the clear definition of that makes a ton of sense. Like this thing just doesn't make sense sitting in a nonprofit world, especially with the amount of money they've needed to raise. You just kind of can't do that without equity stakes. And so this is, I think, good and probably good to see Microsoft and OpenAI both getting a little bit of separation and independence compared to the original deal, but also having a lot of still remaining ties. So it seems like a good outcome. The AGI part is hysterical to me. I don't know how they're ever going to define this term. Like it just doesn't, I don't think thinking of it in those terms doesn't match the way AI works. Cause what you see now is, AI that is super intelligent and can solve like PhD level math and science problems and can't count the number of R's in Blueberry. And I don't know how do you like, it's not like a human that gets generally intelligent across a wide, in a uniform way across different sets of kinds of intelligence. And here we've got is that a super smart thing or a super dumb thing? Kind of yes to both. And I don't know how do you define AGI when you don't have intelligence that advances in the same kind of uniform way across domains the way human intelligence tends to do. And so it just feels like I don't know how you make that distinction.
When you put it that way, it kind of sounds like we already have reached AGI because a lot of people are like that too, where you're like both super smart and super dumb. You were like, how could somebody so smart have done that really dumb thing? So maybe we're already there, Jeff.
If the original test was the Turing test, like, could you communicate with a chatbot and not know? Like, we passed that a while ago. I mean, the studies have shown that people actually think the chatbots are human more often than they think the humans are human. It's clear that we do keep moving the bar for what AI or AGI means. And I don't know that there's any reason to stick that line one place versus another. So I imagine we keep changing the definition to be whatever we haven't quite achieved yet will be the thing we're waiting for. We'll just keep moving that bar down the road. But it's kind of a meaningless thing too, other than for the debates between Microsoft and OpenAI. The rest of us are like, hey, what can the current models do for me well? What can they not? And that set of things will keep changing. And what you call AGI or not, it seems to be a semantic debate to me versus the practical debate of, hey, can we use these capabilities to do X or Y or Z? And what can we not use them to do? And how do we watch that set of capabilities evolve? Just what the name you give it doesn't seem to matter that much to me.
Yeah, and I mean we've sort of reached a point where at least for me, either I fundamentally don't get it because maybe I'm not AGI enough to get it, or the other point of view is like does it really matter? Like AI has come so far now that like, does it matter to have AGI, or is it enough to have like a really freaking finely tuned, amazing AI system for a specific task that, you customize for the specific task at hand, or do you actually need one that kind of can do everything, including count the R's of strawberry and, cure cancer? I don't know. Like if you can cure cancer, I don't know if I care that you can count the R's in strawberry.
Very true.
So, we'll keep watching that.
We'll keep watching it. I'm sure all the college students will be debating it at 3 a.m. in the halls of the dorms, as they should. The next existential debate about the future of humanity, as always, debated by the college students and grad students in the halls of Silicon Valley. But the rest of us just trying to make good use of the models. In the vein of making good use of the models, let's go to our next story, which is agent mode in a more real way is coming to the Cursor IDE. So this is a kind of a techie story. I apologize to the audience; it's a little technical, but I think it's a useful thing to understand because I think it'll give you indications of where this market is heading generally. So for those who are not as familiar, Cursor is what we call integrated development environment, kind of the application that software engineers write code in, and it was created specifically to be AI powered. So it's kind of a native AI based integrated development environment. And they just released version 2, which is a pretty big update and focuses specifically on a redesigned agent interface. So now developers can run up to 8 isolated agents in parallel. Think of them like junior developers. As opposed to writing code, the default is now a chat interface. It just says, tell these agents what to do, and they're going to go look through your code, edit multiple files, find the bugs, fix the things. Isolates each agent, so it's working on its own versions of the files, its own environments. They kind of, each of them are working independently of one another to avoid conflicts. And it folds in kind of things like a web browser and documentation lookup and native testing and voice commands to make it really simple for the developers. And so there they are, the parallel agents just out there working on their own things, really meant to accelerate and almost, I would say, turn a software engineer from, and this is where it gets, I think, interesting for the parallels to regular work, turns a software engineer from the person writing the code to the person managing a team of agents writing code on their behalf, in which they are giving direction and guidance and reviewing results, but really kind of a total switch. And it was fascinating. I use Cursor for my little fun software projects that I do to keep my technical skills, I won't say sharp, but at least not rusty. And like the main interface went from a file of code to a chatbot. And I was like, what just happened? Where did my code go? So really shifting the emphasis to this kind of managing a team of agents working on your behalf from working with a little assistant from an agent on the side. I think it's a pretty big shift. And I think it's probably an indication of what's going to happen to a lot of white collar work as these models get as good at other kinds of work as they currently are at software engineering.
Yeah, I think there's actually, at its surface, this maybe seems like a deeply technical story, but there's so many important implications of this because, like, I kind of think of Cursor as like the Google Docs of software engineers, right? So it's like some interface where everybody can sort of go in and collaborate on something. And now imagine if you had a Google Doc and you had 8 AIs that you could customize for different, like one's a copy editor and one's an idea generator and one's a fact checker and one's this as you're like working on your Google Doc. Now you can have a similar type of thing in your software development, which means that the average software engineer's skill set used to be highly accurate, amazing code, and now it is being a manager. And that used to be something that you spent, a decade on the job, like that while you were learning to be a great coder or like practicing those skills, you were also learning to manage people, influence, et cetera. And so the like incoming bar for new software developers just got a lot higher because they have to have a lot more sort of management, organizational people skills, I think, in this sort of new world. So this to me, it's almost like a tip of the spear of the change in the workforce needs that we're going to see and all the follow-up questions of how do we prepare workers for that? How do we train people in college and before college, et cetera? There's a lot of work we got to do as a society.
I think that's right. And it's interesting. My son's high school just launched a computer science department, and I got to meet the chair, and we were talking about, and they showed up their LLM policy, which was interesting to me because it didn't say don't use AI. What it said was LLM should not be used to generate code for your class because we're trying to teach you how to write code. So we can't do that if you use a large language model to write the code, which is very different than you can't use. There's lots of ways you could use it that aren't writing the code. But I do think there's 2 things that I worry about here. One is the way you know how to evaluate if an architecture or a model or a set of code changes is good is because you used to write those code changes. So when you became an engineering manager, you had experience to actually evaluate the quality of work of the people who might be working with you or for you because you've done that work. And if we are now starting junior developers off who are going to be evaluating the response from this LLM, but they have not done the job of writing the code, are they in a position to understand and evaluate and approve or not approve or send back the quality of work because they haven't done the job? That'll be a difficult challenge. And then you're also asking them, you're right, the task shifts from writing the code to understanding how to define the task, how to set the criteria, how to give the guides and the bounds, which is a different task. And it's one we have not typically taught explicitly. We've taught through experience on the job and doing the work. And so you've got to both develop the new set of skills to kind of define the tasks well, to evaluate the task well, and also figure out how we don't lose the foundational core that's like, hey, I need to be able to look at the response from this thing and see if it makes sense and see if it has major holes. Or you kind of are serving that role of a boss of evaluating and providing feedback on quality of work. And if you've never learned to do the underlying work, can you do that effectively? I don't know. And I think these problems will be generally true across any category of work where we start to see agents doing work for people. Like, can you how do we teach the higher level skills to manage and break down the task and define the work? And how do we make sure you have the foundational skills to evaluate if the quality of work being returned by the agent is good? And I don't know the answer to either of those questions.
Yeah. Well, I don't know either, but we will see what unfolds in the future. So it had been a while since we talked about Elon, and now I'm about to bring him up for the second time in the same episode.
Breaking a good streak, Annie. You're breaking a good streak. I like a streak when we don't talk.
We got to talk about Elon again. So Elon has just launched his own AI-powered encyclopedia, and not shockingly, it's already sparking some controversy. So it is named, speaking of trademark violations, Grokopedia. Um, it's actually not a trademark violation, but obviously, like, kinda going after the, Wikipedia and encyclopedia universe here. So, it released its own AI-generated encyclopedia, and it's positioned as the truthful alternative to Wikipedia. The site launched this week in beta version with roughly 900,000 articles compared to Wikipedia's 7 million articles, all in English. Unlike Wikipedia, users can't edit the entries directly. So, like in Wikipedia, a user can kind of go in, and then in Grokopedia, they can flag errors and suggest changes, but they can't actually make edits. And then Grok AI handles all of the revisions based on whatever that feedback is. And Musk has said that his goal is to eliminate bias and create a more balanced knowledge base. Early reports suggest that maybe it's not hitting that mark right now.
Shocking.
So
Shocking.
shocking. So some Grokopedia entries reportedly copied or closely just mimicked whatever the Wikipedia content was. So it's just like a copy paste. Others included like actual legit factual mistake, like listing the wrong launch dates for Tesla vehicles or misidentifying political figures, that kind of stuff. XAI says it's refining the system through user feedback. But for now, Grokopedia looks more like an experiment in AI-generated truth than a ready replacement for human edited knowledge. So this is pretty interesting. And I guess my hot take is
Oh, hot take.
maybe don't go to AIs for truth, because what AI chatbots are is they are the sum total of everything that has been written so far by humanity. Some of that is factual and some of it is opinion. And if you think that you're going to go and like ask a model that's trained on all those opinions for ground truths and facts, you might be disappointed because history is written by the winners. So that's my hot take.
I like the hot take. This is fascinating to see him come out here, Elon come out here with this. I think my hot take will be I actually think, despite what many people think of as a deterioration of the commentary on Twitter, I do think that having multiple networks where people are debating that have different content moderation policies, different biases in terms of the kinds of users is actually pretty healthy, at least in the social media realm, that it's as opposed to having one or two networks that have a similar set of directions and content they may or may not censor or down rank. It's helpful to have, opinions on both sides. I think this is true of news too, right? Like it's helpful to have not just a CNN, but a Fox News and an MSNBC in a spectrum because you get different perspectives. I don't know if this is as true and what we think of as an encyclopedia where you just kind of want the facts, but it is better probably to have more than one, right? Like there will always be problems in any of these systems, and having a single Wikipedia that is kind of the only source of truth isn't great, but it doesn't feel like going to XAI. I mean, it's pretty bad that Grokopedia didn't know the launch dates for Tesla vehicles. I mean, this is like, you would think of all the companies, you might double check the factual information about in Grokopedia. They might have gone with Tesla as being one. They just did a quick peek and see. Apparently not. So we'll see what happens. I'll have to go start comparing my Grokopedia entries. I don't know if schools will take Grokopedia as an acceptable source for information, at least in the near term.
I'm thinking not. And I agree with the broader point that it's good to have multiple sources, but that is only good if people actually use multiple sources. And the problem is like, if you are somebody who leans the Grok Fox News way, you're not usually looking at the other side and vice versa. And so we're still sort of limited by humans being able to like seek the truth. And so that's a problem we gotta try to solve.
That's true, but I do think it gives, as opposed to saying the only way we can fix censorship problems is to change the behavior of this company. You go, "Oh, no, we have a marketplace of options, and so if I really don't like X, I can go see Y." I think that's healthy. Hopefully, it helps us get towards a more unified place. All right, last story up this week in our continuing our ethics of AI topic. How young is too young for AI chatbots?
65. I don't know what kind of chatbot. I said 65 and then I said, what kind of chatbot?
Well, it depends. This is a whole debate. So let me just tell you what happened, then we can have the discussion. So the GUARD Act, introduced by Senators Josh Hawley and Richard Blumenthal, would require AI companies to verify users' ages, potentially by scanning government-issued IDs or even faces, and then block minors from using AI chatbots altogether. It also mandates bots to remind users every 30 minutes that they're not human, and bans chatbots that generate sexual content or promote self-harm for minors. Lawmakers say it's about protecting kids. Critics argue, of course, it could cripple innovation and create massive privacy risks, i.e., everybody collecting faces and government ID photos for all their users. And at least one company, Character AI, has says that it will end open-ended chat for anyone under 18 no later than November 25th of this year. During the transition, the company is limiting chat time for teams and will keep creative features like video and image generation available. So this is really more about the kind of like human feeling, like a conversational chatbot experience versus if you're just doing kind of Google type searches and getting a chatbot experience. They're really trying to limit people having what feels like a communication with a person or an entity from people under 18. But I do think this question of like how young is too young, how old is too old, are any of us really able to properly control ourselves? I mean, I hear all the debate about protecting young kids from phones and social media, and I go, I understand that kids is where you can make an argument, but like, I don't think adults are any better at it than the kids are. I don't know that there's like 18 and under is your problem. It's kind of everybody that is the problem in terms of how we conceptualize and utilize these tools.
I mean, I talk about this with my friends all the time. They're like, I when my in-laws or my mother or whoever it is comes over for dinner, I spend just as much time telling my kids to put their phone away as grandma. And so it is not an age problem. It's like a user behavior problem. But this is interesting. There's a lot of questions I have. Number one, is it like all chatbots? Like they don't want kids using ChatGPT, or is it just like the ones that are mimicking like relationship and conversation? Because I feel like if we all of a sudden are going to be putting forward laws being like, okay, you can't use ChatGPT till you're 18, it's like totally against the whole premise of everything we always talk about how important it is to teach kids to responsibly use AI because it's such an important part of their future. So that's a question. Do you know the answer to that?
The intent right now is more conversational, but of course, most of the tools are a bit of both, right? Like I can use ChatGPT for purely informational. I could go ask it for relationship advice. I've asked it for, advice on organizations, teams where I'm like, hey, what should I do in this situation? And I think defining that line of a conversational chatbot versus an informational, I don't know that it's easy to draw that line. It certainly, I think, is more targeted at the relationships, building a relationship with the chatbot or going to it in instances, asking for personal advice. But I just don't know how you draw that line the way these tools are built. So I think it's not intended to be as broad, but I don't know how it could possibly not be, given that that's not a clear distinction, kind of like AGI. It's just not clear where you draw the line.
Yeah, that's super unclear to me. And like, I guess my point of view would be like the very far side of the line of like using the chatbot to form a relationship. I'm not sure there's anybody that that's going to be good for. Like, I haven't heard the argument yet where I've been like, yes, at some age that will be very like life enriching to have a personal relationship with a chatbot. But I haven't heard a good story about that yet.
No, it mirrors to me the conversations about social media and phone use where we want to protect the kids because we feel like it's a class over which we're allowed to exert a little more control. We can legally have protection of minors as an argument, but really it's more of a societal problem for how we develop norms and behaviors around these tools because, phone use among the middle-aged, in many cases, I think the older population is having even more phone addiction than the younger population, not just middle-aged, but particularly people 65 plus seniors who are often spending as much time on the phone, didn't grow up with it, or not as familiar, didn't grow up having to think about things like screen time and controlling it, and have more free time on their hands to just scroll the Instagram and the TikTok and enjoy the content. So it does seem like more of a societal problem, and it's interesting that we try and address it through kids, just because I think it's the mechanism that we can legally have some sort of a rule that could pass constitutional muster, at least here in the U.S. But I don't think the problem is limited to the kids. The kids are going to be all right. It's the rest of us.
I think the other thing is, like, it's hard to draw the line of, like, to your point about good versus bad chatbot. It's also hard to draw the line of, like, what is healthy versus unhealthy use. Like, for instance, there's lots of kids, one of them is mine, who are just, like, very creative and love writing stories all the time. My son is constantly writing fiction. So, like, I could see, like, use case where it would be good for him to, like, do character development with an AI to try to think through, like, how to build and shape his character, and he's doing it with the, like, explicit intention of, like, then applying it to something that he knows is fake, as opposed to somebody who's like, "I wanna role play having a friend because I don't have one in real life." Like, it's a very different use case, but it's, like, the same technology or the same tool that would be used for both cases, and so that line is also super unclear to me of, like, where is the creative freedom, and it's good to encourage creative freedom in people of all ages versus, like, "Hey, this is past creative freedom, and now it's, like, an unhealthy obsession," that type of thing. Although, like, artists also all the time do, like, unhealthy, weird things. Like, Daniel Day-Lewis never would get out of character when he's, like, in the middle of filming. Like, he would go home and, like, keep character on until the movie was wrapped up. Like, that's kinda weird, but it worked for him.
Worked for I don't know how it works for his family, but it worked for him. I would find that difficult, but I'm gonna take a vacation, see you in a couple months. It is interesting, and I don't know that I trust the government to be the one to draw these lines, these distinctions, or to make these choices for people. I do think there's a societal conversation debate about how we want to behave in these things, and the companies will probably generate different policies for how they think it makes sense to control and limit and direct these kinds of conversations and topics. But you know, leaving it up to Josh Hawley and Richard Blumenthal to make this decision doesn't feel like the best answer to me for these kinds of questions because I just don't know that that's where we want those decisions being made or that those people are well enough informed about the details to make the right decision. So we'll wait and see if they're able to get this thing passed. But at least I'm hoping maybe we find some other ways to control the way we use not only AI tools, but social media phones. We're struggling with, I think, societally with a lot of stuff.
Well, I totally agree, and you've made this point before of, like, there is no law, there is no, restriction, there is no company that's gonna replace parental involvement in, like, what your kids are doing, so, like, talk to them. Find out what they're doing. Why are they doing it? What's going on? Be curious.
Have a nice conversation.
Not judgmental, like Ted Lasso.
I love that quote. I think it's from Walt Whitman. At least Ted Lasso said it was from Walt Whitman. So I'm gonna just trust Ted on that one. Yeah, be curious. Well, let's just end it with be curious, not judgmental. I love it. That's a great place. Good lesson for life and for following AI too. So all of it. I guess we'll say that's it for this week's What the AI. We'll be back next week, as always, with those head scratching What the AI moments and the latest news from the world of AI. If you like this, please like, subscribe, follow us on whatever app you are using, and do share the episode or give us a rating in your app. So help other people find this content. And if you have an interesting prompt or a question or something you think we ought to cover, drop us a line at email@whattheai.fm, and you might just hear it in the next episode. But next week, I'll see you back here, Annie, for the next episode.
See you next week.
Ready to expand your AI knowledge? Want to become the go-to AI expert in your organization? Take the next step with Upstart's AI certification for financial services. This comprehensive course simplifies the fundamentals of artificial intelligence for financial services professionals. Both the course and this podcast are brought to you by Upstart, whose leading AI lending marketplace connects millions of consumers to banks and credit unions that leverage Upstart's AI technology to deliver superior credit products, from personal loans to auto loans to home equity lines of credit. If you learned something useful this week, hit subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Your support can help others discover What the AI. And finally, share your biggest AI questions and insights with us at email@whattheai.fm. We really do read every message, and we do our best to cover them all on the show.